Go ahead on the point of order. You can, Ms. Khalid. I've recognized Mr. Barrett to start because his hand was up.
The meeting hasn't, no.
It did. As soon as the gavel dropped, you can challenge me if you like. Challenge me.
That's absolutely fine, but I would like an update as to why we have committee business today when we have so many motions that that we've had to go through.
Alleged that Conservatives are bringing forward frivolous ethics complaints. I would remind Ms. Shanahan, through you, Mr. Chair, of the litany of guilty findings by the Ethics Commissioner with respect to key figures in this government. We have the Prime Minister, who was found guilty of violating the Conflict of Interest Act, not once, but twice. The first Prime Minister in Canadian history to be found guilty of breaking the Conflict of Interest Act. Wow. Oops. Wow. Randy is in Vancouver. Come on, Randy. Well, the minister, turns out, was in Vancouver on September the 6th.
Hey gang, what's up? Just Aaron right here, Canadian Looney. We're gonna shoot one here in this studio. It's too windy in Guysborough to record audio today. It is blowing a gale out there. Speaking of blowing a gale, Randy Boissonnault is back in the hot seat in committee. He's not here answering questions, but these guys are looking for him. And the Liberals, Khalid has her points of order. Brenda Shanahan is here trying to divide, distract, confuse Canadians. You know, the Liberal tactic playbook. Shanahan is a disgusting woman. Absolutely brutal to watch and listen to. And Khalid, me. What a spoiled problem child that piece of work is. Fortunately, we've got Michael Barrett, Michael Cooper, and BOISSONNAULT that are demanding that they get Randy's ass back in the chair to answer these questions on his corruption. Now there's ties to coke deals, all of these other brutal things. He's pretending that he's an Indigenous person so that he can apply for oh my God, it's so brutal, guys. Let's get into the committee meeting. We're gonna kick it off here with Barrett. Khalid and Shanahan stick their dirty noses in as often as possible, but these cowboys can handle themselves. Let's take a look. These committee meetings, guys. Someone's got to shut Khalid down. Oh my God, she's so gross. Let's take a peek. They're gonna get Randy Boissonnault. You're going down, Minister of Employment, little gimp. Loser, stealing from Canadians. Little weasel. Let's take a peek. Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead on the point of order.
I would like to seek two clarifications from you.
Number one.
With respect to a status update on Twitter documents and at some point in today's meeting,
okay.
But also with respect to how do you decide who gets recognized in this committee? I have had my hand raised on multiple occasions, and I know that I've been the first person to have raised my hand on meeting after meeting after meeting, and yet you don't recognize me. I'm just wondering, can we count on your nonpartisanship as,
yes, you
as chair on this committee?
You can,
I'm not done
Ms.
talking,
Khalid.
Mr. Chair.
You can, Ms. Khalid. I've recognized Mr. Barrett to start because his hand was up.
The meeting hasn't, no.
It did. As soon as the gavel dropped, you can challenge me if you like. Challenge me.
That's absolutely fine, but I would like an update as to why we have committee business today when we have so many motions that that we've had to go through and so many issues that that we needed to get through, and yet we're having another committee business meeting today, which doesn't help us understand because we haven't seen any work plans from you, we haven't seen any witness lists from you, we haven't seen how we are going to conduct ourselves with respect to all of these motions. And I don't understand why we had a committee.
So I was going to update the committee before your point of order.
No, Chair, clearly you passed the floor to Mr. Barrett, which is your right, absolutely, you know, because you only see that side of the floor. Great, good for you. But I would like to know what exactly it is that we're doing here. If we're having a committee business meeting, then I would like to know what is the committee's business from you, Chair, from all of these motions that we've passed, with all of these witnesses that we've submitted on all of these various studies, and yet we have no idea as to what it is that we're doing, except for calling motion after motion and
so
just only referring to Mr.
You want me
Barrett.
to,
Mr.
you want me to
Barrett
answer
might
the
as well
question?
be.
You want me to answer the question?
Mr. Barrett might as well be the chair of this committee.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, so the committee business was to update the committee on where we're at with witnesses. We had some challenges based on the fact that the motion was passed last Tuesday on the CRA. So as it stands right now, I wanted to update the committee that on the 19th, we've got the Privacy Commissioner scheduled. We have got H&R Block, so we just couldn't get anybody scheduled for today. H&R Block is also scheduled, and then on the 21st, we're still waiting to hear from the minister. The request has been made to have the minister appear before the committee, and then we're going to have the commissioner of the CRA. The challenge is that some of the commissioners are out of the country, and so we've been able to schedule those for the week of the 19th when we get back. I've got Mr. Barrett followed by Mr. Villemure. Go ahead, Mr. Barrett. Please, you have the floor.
Chair, I'm going to move a motion in regards to Minister Randy Boissonnau's involvement in global health imports and the firm's contracts with the Government of Canada. The committee called the following witnesses: Shauna Parker and Felix Papineau of Global Health Imports, Minister Randy Boissonnau and Melvina Gowie. I've sent that to the clerk in both official languages, Chair, and I'd like to speak to the motion.
Okay, the motion is in order. Madam Clerk, have you shared that motion with members of the committee? It'll be coming around in a second. Mr. Barrett, you said you'd like to speak to the motion. Go ahead, sir.
Chair, it's a bit like Groundhog Day when it comes to this scandal with Randy Boissonnau, and it continues to both get headlines but concern Canadians. And with respect to our obligation and our mandate under the Conflict of Interest Act and the obligations of that minister to abide by it. And we've had appearances at this committee by the minister, by his business partners, and the minister claimed that he was not the person in question, that it was another Randy, that it wasn't him. But we have now new text messages or WhatsApp messages that are from Stephen Anderson from 2022, say, I just updated Felix and Randy, and we've got another, I won't tell Shauna and Felix and Randy yet. Now, while Mr. Anderson, the business partner, the 50% business partner with Justin Trudeau's minister from Edmonton, Randy Boissonnau, he claimed it was an autocorrect.
9 times.
9 times. But we now have more messages, so it would have to be more than 9 times. But in none of those 9 instances, nor in the new documents, does anyone ask, oh, who do you mean? Because I'm not familiar with that name. Oh, is that a typo? Is it someone else? No, they say it's Randy. Now, Randy has said that he's not the Randy in question. But we also have confirmation that there was no other Randy who worked at this firm. So we later learned that when the Liberal minister from Edmonton had said that he couldn't have communicated with his business partner Stephen Anderson on the dates in question, he was at a Liberal cabinet retreat, and he was in a room impenetrable by electronic communications, and his phone was locked in a box and buried under the building. That, well, he did actually exchange text messages and have a phone call with his business partner, Stephen Anderson. So it's another example where we see that this Liberal minister is not being truthful. We also know that while he was a 50% owner of the company, they won a contract with the Government of Canada. Well, he was sitting around the cabinet table. Of course, none of these things are acceptable, but what is of paramount importance is that when we have an issue like we did with Mr. Anderson, who this committee did vote by majority to send to the House, that he had been in contempt and had prevaricated when he was here, and the Speaker has ruled on that. Well, now we have an issue of a similar nature with respect to the minister. So I'm not today looking for the committee to take a decision on if there's been a contempt by the minister, but I do think that we need information about this. And while these text messages or WhatsApp messages add a new dimension to what this committee's dealing with, it comes down to whether or not the minister was honest when he testified at this committee. But there's a story in the National Post today that says, Liberal minister's former business questioned over Indigenous claims in government contract bids. And it's highly suspicious at best. But at worst, it's fraud. And so, while that issue is one that perhaps we can discuss another day, it does certainly speak to the apparent dishonesty by the minister. We can't have people come before parliamentary committees and do anything other than tell us the truth. They can't not answer the question, and they can't lie to us.
Right.
So we do need answers to that. It is incumbent on this committee. And what we've heard time and time again from members of the Liberal Party is that, well, the ethics commissioner looked at it and said it was fine. Well, then he had to look at it again because it turns out he wasn't given all of the information. And then he had to look at it again because he wasn't given all of the information. I think that he's going to find himself surprised that he was again deprived of all of the information. But that's for the ethics commissioner to decide. He can take his own, he can take his decisions about what he would like to do. But this committee is solely responsible for whether or not we permit people to come before this committee and lie. And so we need to get answers, and it's important that the witnesses that are proposed in the motion also come and speak to this, because we've seen so far that the co-owners of the company have demonstrated themselves not to be honest. We are not looking for Mr. Anderson to return. The committee has taken a decision with respect to his conduct before this committee, referred it to the House, and the House will deal with it. But we do need to speak to another parliamentarian, his business partner, Mr. Boissonnault, and we need to hear from these two folks who come up every single time the minister's name is mentioned, and that's Shauna and Felix. No one in this committee should want to be made a fool of by people who are invited to come before us. But that's what's happening. We are being made a fool of by these witnesses who have come before the committee, and it can't be allowed to stand that Randy Boissonnault can offer a different set of facts in answering the same question every time he comes before the committee. He needs to come here, tell us the truth, and then we can move on. But until we've finally got the truth, then this committee needs to undertake this study and get resolution.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. I have Mr. Genuis next, followed by Ms. Shanahan, and then Mr. Cooper. Go ahead, Mr. Genuis.
Thank you very much, Chair. I want to speak in support of this motion for Mr. Barrett to bring back Liberal Minister Randy Boissonnault here to the Ethics Committee. And in particular, I want to speak to the issue of claims made that his company, a company that he owned as minister that was also seeking federal government contracts, claims that this company was Indigenous. Now, the Government Operations Committee that I serve as a regular member on has been investigating this government's Indigenous procurement scandal. And we've been undertaking this investigation really at the request and in response to concerns that have been raised by Indigenous leaders themselves. Indigenous leaders have asked the Auditor General to look into the contracting scandal. And the basis of this scandal is basically that well-connected non-Indigenous elites have been able to take for themselves contracts that are supposed to go to Indigenous peoples and Indigenous businesses. It is cultural appropriation leading to financial misappropriation. It's people pretending to be Indigenous or entering into shady joint ventures where most of the benefit and most of the action is happening on the non-Indigenous side to try to appropriate benefits through these kinds of arrangements away from Indigenous communities towards well-connected non-Indigenous insiders. And this is a problem that we have become aware of, that we've been investigating for a number of months. And in fact, the AFN, Chief Bernard from the AFN said that in their view, most of those contracts from the Indigenous procurement set aside are going to shell companies. So this is a huge problem. It's a problem that has been brought to Parliament by Indigenous leaders themselves, and it's a problem that we have been trying to get to the bottom of. Meanwhile, Liberals have been saying, oh, there's nothing to see here, no big deal, we're trying to check the box and wanting to move on, rather than actually get into the substance of the issue and really take seriously what we're hearing from Indigenous leaders. Then we have today this revelation, though, that not only is it just well-connected elite insiders taking advantage of this program, but it is the most well-connected elite insider possible. That is a minister of the Crown. His own company has been trying to get contracts on the basis of a claim that the company is Indigenous owned. And looking back at the record, Minister Boissonnault has made all kinds of contradictory claims regarding his identity in various places, in various publications. And in the House today, the Liberals admitted, in fact, in response to a question period, they admitted that this business was never on the Indigenous business list. So the government is saying that that this company wasn't on the Indigenous business list, and yet the minister's company was making the claim that they were Indigenous on the basis of inconsistent claims about identity that the minister has made. So this is a very serious issue because we can see the legacy of various things that have been done to Indigenous peoples, tragic rates of poverty, and therefore the urgency of fully including Indigenous peoples in the economy, of supporting measures that advance economic development. And yet we have measures announced by the government then being taken advantage of by elite insiders, including a company that in the course of trying to get these contracts claimed to be fully Indigenous owned and that was able to do business with the government to their advantage. So we very much need to get to the bottom of these claims and the involvement of Minister Boissonnault in this very serious Liberal Indigenous procurement scandal. So I'm very supportive of the motion and look forward to him being brought back to testify before this committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Genuis.
It would seem to me that there are other better things that we could be doing. There's more productive things that we could be doing to be serving our constituents, and I'm quite sure that the other opposition members here would feel the same way. So Chair, I'm still putting my thoughts together on this. I would like to, please, if you can put me back on the list, because I'd like to come back and, and after I've gathered my thoughts a little bit. But those were just some preliminary observations that I wanted to make. Thank you.
So I've put the member from Chateauguay-Lacal back on the list, Ms. Shanahan. I'm going to go to Mr. Cooper next. Go ahead.
Be on the list, please.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Shanahan alleged that Conservatives are bringing forward frivolous ethics complaints. I would remind Ms. Shanahan, through you, Mr. Chair, of the litany of guilty findings by the Ethics Commissioner with respect to key figures in this government. We have the Prime Minister, who was found guilty of violating the Conflict of Interest Act. Not once, but twice. The first Prime Minister in Canadian history to be found guilty of breaking the Conflict of Interest Act. How about the current Minister of Public Safety, Dominic LeBlanc, guilty of contravening the Conflict of Interest Act? And then there's the Trade Minister, Mary Ng, guilty of violating the Conflict of Interest Act. And remember Bill Morneau, the former finance minister under Justin Trudeau, guilty of violating the Conflict of Interest Act, I think twice in his case. And then there's the Prime Minister's former parliamentary secretary, guilty of contravening the Conflict of Interest Act. What we have, Mr. Chair, is a pattern of conflict and corruption in this government that goes right to the top, right to the Prime Minister.
Serial lawbreakers.
A bunch of serial lawbreakers. Indeed, the Prime Minister, their leader, is probably the biggest lawbreaker amongst them. Now, with respect to the motion that has been put forward by Mr. Barrett, the central question that must be answered is, who's Randy? And where is Randy, by the way? Where is he? In the face, he seems to be in hiding in the face of today's report in the National Post that he fraudulently represented that his company was Indigenous owned to secure millions of dollars of federal contracts. So where is he? It would be nice if he could show his face. But we have an affidavit that was filed on November 5th that we now have a copy of, and contained within the affidavit are a series of exhibits that include new text messages that cast further doubt about the minister's truthfulness when he came before this committee. Right. And I think it's important to look at the track record of this minister when it comes to telling the truth and when it comes to being forthcoming. This is a minister who came to this committee in June and was adamant that he wasn't the Randy in the text messages. But of course, the Gowie group believed at all times that the Randy in the text messages was the Minister of Employment. Stephen Anderson was asked by Global News, who is the Randy in the text messages? And he said, well, it's the VP of Logistics. But when Global News looked into who is the VP of Logistics, they found out that it was not a Randy, it was a guy by the name of Edward Anderson, who turns out to be Stephen Anderson's father, Stephen Anderson being the shady business partner of the Minister of Employment. Global News made further inquiries to find a trace of this other Randy. They couldn't. Stephen Anderson came before the committee and said there was only one Randy that was ever connected to Global Health Imports, and that is the Minister of Employment. And not to mention the fact that in the original text messages that were discovered, the Randy is referenced in the context of being a partner. Well, it turns out that the Minister of Employment was a partner with Stephen Anderson up until he was elected in 2021. And at the time of the text messages, the minister had a 50% ownership stake in the company in Global Health Imports. So in the face of all of that, without any trace of another Randy, without any credible explanation of who this other Randy could be, there is really only one conclusion that can be drawn to the question of who's Randy, and that is that Randy is the Minister of Employment, the minister from Edmonton, a Randy who shook down Global Health Imports in a $500,000 wire fraud scheme, a Randy who was a 50% owner, a partner in a company that has been ordered by Alberta courts to pay back clients $7.8 million for ripping them off.
Unbelievable. Wow. Unbelievable.
We have a minister now who is part of a company that has been sued by the Gowie Group for this $500,000 shakedown when when Global Health Imports failed to deliver the PPE that they had ordered pursuant to the contract that they had entered into. And remember when the minister came to committee in June, and one of the things that his office did at the time was issue a statement that said it could not have been the minister because the minister was in Vancouver on September the 8th, 2022, and he was at a cabinet meeting and he didn't have access to his phone, and therefore it was impossible that the Randy in the text messages was the minister. But then, after he appears before the committee the first time, Global News uncovers new text messages. New text messages from September 6, 2022, from between Anderson and the Gowie Group, in which Anderson, as he's shaking them down for the $500,000, says, asking as West Coast is closing in 7 minutes and Randy is in the Vancouver office. Wow. Oops. Wow. Randy is in Vancouver. Come on, Randy. Well, the minister, turns out, was in Vancouver on September the 6th. Uh-huh. And when the minister came back to committee in September with these fresh text messages, fresh insofar as at the time they had just recently been made public, my colleague, Mr. Barrett, put it to him to say, come on, Minister, you're obviously that Randy. And the minister was confronted with the text messages, admitted that, yes, he was in Vancouver on September 6th, and then he provided new information that he had withheld from the committee, and that is that he had texted and spoken with Anderson on September the 6th. Wow. Now, when the minister came in June, he would have had committee believe that he had nothing to do with Anderson.
Exactly.
That upon being elected in 2021, other than having a 50% ownership stake, which is a pretty big deal, that he never spoke to this guy. He had nothing to do with the operations of the company. He was totally oblivious to what was going on. And then he comes back, confronted with text messages, placing him in Vancouver at the same time that Anderson is referring to a Randy in Vancouver. He suddenly says, oh, by the way, I spoke with Anderson. That constituted a material omission on the part of the minister. The minister, for all intents and purposes, misrepresented to this committee his dealings with Anderson by his omission.
Exactly. Wow.
And so it's part of a pattern of not being forthcoming. It's part of a pattern of a minister who is changing his story as new details emerge. So now that we have these additional text messages that evidence that the minister was not forthcoming and may provide further evidence that the minister was involved in fraud. It will be interesting to see how his story changes when he comes, hopefully, before this committee as soon as possible. And so we need to hear from this minister. He shouldn't be a minister. He should have been fired long ago as a minister. He has no place sitting in the cabinet, given his record of frankly not being forthcoming, being implicated in this shady business that is ridden by allegations of fraud, and not just allegations of fraud. There are, I just emphasize again, $7.8 million in judgments by Alberta courts against his company, the company that he had a 50% interest in, stemming from lawsuits from the time that he was a partner in the business. So, Mr. Chair, it's important that we pass Mr. Barrett's motion and haul Minister Boissonnault back to this committee.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cooper.
Gang, when do we think we're going to see Boissonnault testifying again? He's only going to incriminate himself further. It's very apparent to anybody that's been following this story that he and the Liberal cabinet, all of these backbenchers that take part in the committee meetings, are just dividing, distracting, trying to confuse Canadians when they should just be throwing Boissonnault, the guilty little gimp, throw him right under the bus. Randy is lame. Oh, Lord. These committee meetings are wild. The corruption involved with our Liberal federal government with this NDP coalition is hard to believe. I'm Aaron, Canadian Looney. Like, share, subscribe. The videos are long, but we're showing things in context to show you what is really happening. That's it. Like, share, subscribe, get notified. Come and join us for one of the live shows. They're a blast. That's it. Thank you for watching this video. We'll try to get back outside when the wind isn't blowing like 120 kilometer gusts. It's easier to record that way. Thank you all for watching. We'll catch you next video. Have a great day, guys. Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics.